In 1962, Hazel Mullen met and fell in love with Shan Mohangi. She was 14, he was 22. Their ages wouldn't be the only major difference between them. Hazel Mullen was from Shankill on the south side of Dublin. She was one of 8 children, the fourth eldest, and her father died in 1961. She had quit school, and at 14 she was working in Brown's Chemist in Stephen's Green in Dublin city centre. She was good looking and likeable. It was at the chemist where she would meet Shan Mohangi, a 22-year-old medical student from South Africa, a town called Natal, and he was of Indian descent. His family were wealthy, and he had moved to Dublin in 1961 to study medicine at the Royal College of Surgeons. He lived in a one-bedroom apartment at 95 Harcourt Street, also in the city centre. So the two met in August 1962 when Shan had come in to buy some medicine in the chemist. She was 14 and he was 22. So these days, if a 22-year-old came in and started flirting with a 14-year-old, he would either be arrested or battered. But also today, a 14-year-old wouldn't be working in a chemist or anywhere like that. So, we have to give the benefit of the doubt that times were a little different then, although it was still a bit odd. Shan was soon at Hazel's home meeting her mother. It should be said that from the very beginning, Shan's intentions were honourable. He wasn't looking to mess around with Hazel. He was looking to marry her from the get-go. Bridget Mullen, however, saw, some sense and apparently told Shan, her daughter was too young. After all, Shan was her first boyfriend, and Bridget said, that she wanted her to, live and meet different boys and stuff before settling down to, the life of a wife. But in Shan's culture, it would have been, quite normal to be married at such a young age. Bridget, however, was won over by his charm and politeness and allowed them to date and for him to come over to their home. So the couple dated and they fell madly in love. And, young, naive Hazel couldn't have known the cultural differences between the two of them, or that Shan was quite jealous and possessive. Shan, in fact, had actually been engaged before. He met a nurse in 1961 when he had arrived here, and they got engaged. But she broke it off in July 1962 because of his fits of jealousy. If you remember, July 1962 was only a month before he meets Hazel and wants to marry her. It was said that Shan wasn't necessarily aggressive all the time with Hazel, although he was quite jealous and possessive, but there are 2 instances where he does become physical. The first was when he slapped her across the face because she told him that he was not the first man that she had kissed. Hazel's 14, she probably kissed a boy her own age, when she was 13 or something. The second one, and we don't know the reasoning behind it or the circumstances, Shan threw a pot of boiling rice across the kitchen and it hit Hazel's back and burned her so badly that she was in hospital for 3 weeks recovering. I don't really understand how at this point your mother is not intervening here, is not telling you can't see him anymore, is not reporting him to the Gardaí. This is physical assault now. It's not just, oh, my daughter's dating someone a lot older, which is inappropriate. It is now like a crime has been committed. In early 1963, Hazel ended things with Shan. He was said to have struggled with this because at the same time he was, his studies weren't going great, and he was finding it hard to survive on the allowance that his father was sending to him. So Cecil Frew, Shan's landlord, who apparently kind of took a shine to him, kind of took like a mentor-y kind of role with him, got him a job in the Green Tureen, which was the restaurant on the basement of 95 Harcourt Street. So he got a job here as a part-time chef. Hazel also got a new job at a bank, and after a few months separation, the couple started seeing each other again and were apparently stronger than ever. But Hazel's new job seemed to let her, independence and her self-esteem and confidence grow. And this brought along the attraction of other men. Shan, I should just point out, during the separation, started seeing the nurse, the ex-fiance, and when he got back with Hazel, didn't stop seeing her. So he was now seeing the two of them. So, he was happy to be seeing the second girl, but was very much, was very clear that Hazel was just for him. Some sources say that by this point Hazel was 16, but I think she would have been 15 and then, would be going 16 soon, because at the same time last year she was 14 going on 15 soon. So I don't think she had turned 16 just quite yet. I could be wrong. But on the Saturday anyway, she worked a half day, so she finished around lunchtime. And when she didn't come home for dinner at dinner time, her family got worried. And so one of her brothers actually went into Harcourt Street to the Green Tureen to see Shan and ask him. He said that he didn't see her that day, but that he had spoke to her on the phone earlier at lunchtime, and she said that she was going to go shopping. So Shan and the brother actually head back to Shankill, and they inform the Gardaí of her, that they don't know where she is. Shan stays with the Mullens that night and actually stays in Hazel's bedroom. The following day, the Gardaí begin their search for Hazel Mullen. They actually do search like the Green Tureen and his apartment and stuff. And in the basement of the Green Tureen, there's like rubbish strewn around, but apart from that, it's just empty. There's nothing there. Now, the day before, on the Saturday when Hazel went missing, there had been some unusual activity at 95 Harcourt Street. A couple going by saw smoke coming out one of the grates, and the restaurant was actually closed at this time, so they knocked in, to like let the residents know that there was smoke coming. And they said that a coloured man answered the door and said like no, everything was fine, but his behaviour made them call the fire brigade. So 3 fire engines arrived, and when they arrived, they found Shan topless, like naked to the waist, and he was like sweating profusely, and he told them that there had been a minor fire, and he showed them some smouldering rags and stuff. So they had a look around. Once they were happy that the fire was out, they left. The day after Hazel's disappearance, Cecil Frew noticed a strange smell coming from the restaurant, so he got the drains cleared, but the stench remained. Around this time, he also started to worry about Shan. His behaviour was quite strange, and apparently, some comments he made gave Cecil the impression that Shan was not being completely truthful about Hazel's disappearance. So Cecil sat down with him. Shan was very distressed, and Cecil, convinced him or urged him to confess. So Shan agreed to stay in his apartment, and Cecil went off to Harcourt Garda Station and, spoke to some of the detectives. And when they got back, Shan's apartment was locked. Sergeant James O'Connell could smell like gas, and he could hear the gas running. So when they got in, Shan was unconscious, so he was rushed to hospital. Hazel Mullen's dismembered body parts were found in the bins in the Green Tureen basement, as well as behind the cupboards in Shan's apartment. Her inner organs were missing. Large splashes of blood and traces of human remains that were found at the premises showed that this was all done in a manic rush. The body was dismembered with a knife and a cleaver. Shan recovered in hospital a few days later and confessed to Gardaí. He said that on the Saturday, at lunchtime, Hazel arrived at the Green Tureen and, asked him to show her around. During this, he asked her, was she seeing anyone else? And I've seen it be put as in, an older woman might have known to lie or to, try dodge the question or something like that, but because Hazel was younger and probably naive, she told him. But I also think that's kind of a mature thing as well to do, because if you are seeing other people, let them know you're seeing other people. According to the medical student, she admitted to having something to do with someone. She didn't mention the person's name, but that she did say it was sex. And Shan said that he just flew into a jealous rage and put his hands around her neck and started squeezing. He said that when he came to his senses, she was dead, and he actually went up to his apartment to try gain composure. And all he could come up with was to get rid of the body, so he began to cut it up in a blind panic. He tried to incinerate her head in the oven of the restaurant. He also cut out her voice box and burnt it. And confessing to the Gardaí about all this, he said, quote, "I had been prepared to give up everything at home, and yet she had let me down." But you having a second girlfriend didn't let her down. His trial was on the 10th of February 1964. It lasted 16 days, and the main kind of aspect was his state of mind to, determine if it should be a charge of manslaughter or murder. When he had tried to kill himself in his apartment, he had actually wrote a suicide note to his ex-fiancée, or his now girlfriend. In it, he said, quote, "I did not intend killing Hazel. The moment I learned she was unfaithful to me, I lost my head and did something rash which I am regretting now." The judge pointed out, and I'm one for agreeing with this because you might know my opinions on the whole manslaughter murder thing at this stage, but the judge pointed out that if for any moment while he had his hands on her neck that he wanted to kill her, then it's murder. If for one moment in that action he had wanted to kill her, then it was murder. The jury decided that it was his intention to kill her, so Shan Mohangi was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death by hanging. He immediately appealed on two grounds of his ex-fiancée, now girlfriend's, testimony. The first was that he had actually spent the night before Hazel's murder with the ex-fiancée. Scumbag. Secondly, and more importantly, she spoke of his, jealous fits and, his rage. And one time he put his hands around her neck and threatened to strangle her. These statements were then deemed prejudicial. Now, if you want to say the first one was because like that, it's kind of, tainting the jury to be like, oh, he's a scumbag or he's whatever. Fine, okay. But surely the second testimony about what he had done with the ex, the fits of jealousy and threatening to strangle her, that shows a pattern of behaviour. That's not prejudicial. That's a pattern of behaviour of someone. Anyway, he got a new trial, and in July 1965 he was found guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter. He was sentenced to 7 years. He served 4, and then he was deported back to South Africa. But the story doesn't end there for Shan Mohangi, or should I say Narantuk Jamuna, because when he went back to South Africa, he changed his name, started up a successful business, and ran for parliament. So he went on to win a parliamentary seat with the National Party, which was like the Asians' only house or party or whatever. He was actually suspended from them in 1996 on suspicion of fraud. He then switched to the South African Inclusive Democrats, who put him forward for a nomination in an election in 2009. But in 2009, his past caught up with him. The party found out that he had been convicted of murdering Hazel Mullen 46 years earlier. And it seems that they actually couldn't really kick him off the ballot because he had already gotten through. But he was essentially forced to resign, and I don't really know where he goes from there. It would be quite interesting to know what kind of life he had over there. Did he get married and stuff like that? Because if he behaved that way, violently towards women here, I would have to imagine that he also behaved violently towards women over there. Because I keep saying about, the culture differences and stuff. And so if it is a case of, women over there being more obedient, more loyal, this type of thing, maybe then he wouldn't go into those fits of rages or something. I don't know. But I would think that he went on to hurt other women. Sorry that I can't find a more recent picture. I actually was trying to search, and a couple of pictures came up, and I couldn't guarantee, the type of way I couldn't guarantee that it was actually him, and so I didn't want to put it up in case it wasn't. And also there was very little photo, so I actually only have one photo of Shan from when he was here in Ireland, and one photo of Hazel. Bridget Mullen, who died in 1997, had actually forgiven Shan for the murder of her daughter. She said, quote, "Not only have we forgiven Shan, but in our view, God has forgiven him." A better woman than me, Bridget. This case was quite shocking, obviously, for the time. Things like that didn't happen. you know, killing your girlfriend and chopping her up. Like, it just didn't. It's such a sensational type of case, especially for Ireland in the 60s. And it's such a sad case as well. Like, she was so young, and like that, I say there was the bit of naivety to it, you know, and it was just unlucky. I don't really think, in a way, I don't think the culture difference should be to blame. I just think him as a man, as a person, should be what's to blame. As I've spoken before about my position on manslaughter, I think so many people get away with manslaughter when, like, just because you didn't decide the day before to kill someone doesn't mean that it's not murder. That's my position on it anyway. You know, like, if you stab someone, you've stabbed that person. Like, you've decided to use a knife and stabbed him. You know, the type of thing. Actually, there was only a case here, this year, well, in 2020, at a 18-year-old who was stabbed to death by, I think they were 16 at the time. They're 17 now, and they got manslaughter. But I actually only heard recently in the case that apparently there was a fight in the park and stuff. I won't get into it too much, but he stabbed him. I think there might have been a scuffle, let's say. I'm fine, he had a knife. He shouldn't have knives, but there should be more tougher crimes on that. But he stabbed him. And if you wanted to use that one stab as, oh, there was a scuffle and he panicked or something, fine. But that poor boy ran, and the other boy ran after him and stabbed him. When he fell down, stabbed him 3 more times. That is murder. I don't care what age that is. That is murder. He should have been charged and done with murder. And he got manslaughter. He'll be out by the time he's 25 to live his life. So that's my position on manslaughter, as we know. And I think just even for manslaughter, like 7 years and to only serve 4. 4 years is nothing. You get more for dealing drugs, like. But I just wanted to leave the case on this quote by the prosecution barrister. From the moment the accused man formed the intention of marrying her, this girl was doomed either to death or serious injury. In his eyes, a woman kissed is a woman tainted. So that is the sad story of Hazel Mullen and the bizarre story of Shan Mohangi. I actually only came across this case in a book that I got this Christmas for Christmas. And so when I read it, I was like, God, like, how have I never heard of this story? Because like that, it was so bizarre and sensational and stuff. But yeah, so I just kind of dug into it again. There wasn't a lot on it, and there wasn't a lot of pictures or anything. But I just thought it would be interesting to tell you guys. I thought you might like to hear it, and then obviously, again, it deserves to be told. Speaking of the Christmas period, I guess, I hope you all had a nice time, stayed safe. Also, there's been a lot of like extra kind of comments coming in and stuff about cases, and I've been really enjoying reading them. So please, if you have any kind of feedback or anything like that, let me know. There was a few, like, even just getting people's different perspectives. It's interesting because I might have one kind of point of view, and hearing yours and yours and yours is interesting. So like someone commented on the Lisa Doyle case about the engagement ring and said, you know, like, oh, like they would take their engagement ring off because it's big, so they wouldn't sleep with it. Whereas I would have thought, like, oh sure, like, why would you be taking your engagement ring off when you're going to bed? And then like someone else commented about the Trevor Deely case and, you know, said that they lived near Pembroke Road, I think, or worked near there. So they were saying that they would go past it a lot, and it's a lot more exposed to the elements. So they said it would kind of make sense to go down Haddington Road if the weather was really bad. Just stuff like that. I love hearing stuff like that. So yeah, thank you, and keep letting me know what you think of the videos and what your thoughts are on the cases. Just hit yesterday, what day is it? 500 subscribers, so I'm really happy to be kind of getting like to a little mini milestone, I suppose you'd call it. But yeah, so if you do like the videos, please subscribe. Please let other people know who like true crime, and of course let me know, because I love hearing back. So yeah, so that's my little ramble over. Yeah, see you soon. Thanks. Bye.